Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. I'm deadheading more in hope than expectation because we're running very close to the end of the season's flowering, but it's amazing how the jewel garden has kept going. It's gone from summer to late summer into autumn, and we're almost at winter now, and yet plants like the tithonias, like the dahlias, like the salvias are all still flowering, because we haven't yet had any frost. And by cutting back, there just might be new buds that appear. And I'm sounding tentative because what I know in reality is at this time of year, it can change overnight. For example, last November, this was all under snow. We had thick snow for a week. So this is all borrowed time. And actually, I quite like that. And it's just enjoying it because you know this is fragile and this is very temporary. But there are lots of other jobs that we can be getting on with now. So, coming up on today's programme. Carol is in Waterbury Gardens in Oxfordshire, where their spectacular borders maintain their colour right through autumn and beyond.
Oh, well, could anything epitomise the autumn better than this beautiful aster? It's Aster Little Carlo, and it has to be my all-time favourite.
We visit Craigburn, a garden in Dumfries and Galloway that has echoes of the Himalayas.
Himalayan blue poppies are one of the features of Craigburn, but when I moved here and the garden was just wilderness, there wasn't anything like this growing here.
Arit visits a new housing estate in Essex, where the residents enjoy gardens planted specifically and uniquely for them.
It's so exciting to see this amount of planting on a new development. All the plants are up close and personal to the houses.
And we head to West Sussex to meet a team of gardeners as they wrap up warm and crack on with some jobs that can be done even on the bleakest midwinter day.
Winter is the only time that you can go faster than nature and catch up.
A really significant job for me is the planting up of the big pots, both here in the cottage garden and in the jewel garden. And there are two planting seasons, and they mark a major shift in the garden. In summer in the jewel garden, we have gingers and pelargoniums and petunias. And here in the cottage garden, we had sweet peas this year. And then the next step is to plant up for spring, and that's always tulips. And what I've done for the last few years is plant these big pots with a layer of 3 different types of tulip topped with wallflowers, and it works beautifully. The first thing, though, if you're going to plant any tulip anywhere, make sure you have decent peat-free compost. If you can, get some grit and some leaf mould if you've got it, some garden compost if you've got it, and mix it all up. The simplest way is in equal proportions. It means that it's really well drained, it's got lovely texture for the roots to grow in, and it's got a bit of nutrition. So we need a layer in the bottom for the first layer of tulips. Now the first one I'm going to plant is apricot impression. This is my quest for apricot. It's a pale orange flushed with pink. Tulips are very good at growing up through quite a deep depth of soil. And in fact, the deeper they are, the longer and stronger their stems will be. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating, that when you're planting tulips in particular, but bulbs in general, pack them into a pot. They look so much better if the colour is just bursting out rather than spread rather thinly. So cover that over, ready for the next layer. There's no magic depth of soil. It's sort of somewhere between 3 and 5 inches, depending on the size of the pot. And then start again. And this time, I've got a variety called Mistress. It's a lovely, delicate pink with a slightly grey, smoky cast to it. If you're planting in pots, always buy new bulbs, because they're going to be big, they're going to be healthy, so you can be guaranteed really good flowers. Don't worry about the bulbs finding their way past each other. They'll do that fine without you. Cover that over. My final tulip is one called Monty. It's fundamentally pink, but distinctly marked with a kind of pale orange. If you like pastels, or you want to have pastels in your border, this is a banker. Okay, let's do these. The reason that we say plant tulips in November is primarily because tulips need cold weather to trigger them into growth. And if you go to buy tulips now, you can pick up good bargains, so don't feel you've missed the boat. Right, cover that over. So, the tulips are nice and snug in their layers, and I'm going to put the wallflowers that I collected over the top, so the tulips will grow through the wallflowers and you'll have them both flowering at the same time. And not only will you have the incredible display of the tulips, but you'll have that fabulous honey fragrance of the wallflowers as well. And the wallflower I'm putting in is one called Primrose Bedder. The Bedder series is really reliable. And this is a soft yellow, which should go with those apricot-y pink tones. Having planted the wallflowers, water the pot, and then it won't need watering again until you start to see the tulips grow. And that's it. You don't have to do anything else. I'm going to put a bit of grit around them, but that's mainly for decorative purposes. What I will also add are some rose prunings, because one of the recent problems we've had is squirrels digging up the bulbs. And if you just lace nice prickly rose prunings just across the top of the pot, that keeps the little blighters at bay. Okay, we're now going to join Carol, who last month went to visit a garden that was just filled with autumnal colour.
The cooler days of autumn are here, and things are changing in the garden. It's the time of year when we embrace the subtle charms of the season and say goodbye to the flamboyance, glitz and colour of summer. But not here at Waterbury Gardens. Their borders are zinging with colour, and what's more, it's going to go on right through the autumn. These are the herbaceous borders, and they're chock-a-block with colour. Most of it is supplied by one of my favourite autumnal plants, the Michaelmas daisy. Michaelmas daisies epitomise autumn. They peak around the time of Michaelmas Day, September the 29th, hence their popular name. Many species were introduced to Britain from North America in the 17th century. There are two main groups of Michaelmas daisies. There are the Novae Angliae, meaning New England, and there are the Novae Belgii, meaning New Belgium, the old name for New York. They're quite different in some ways, although the flowers are very similar. This is a wonderful example of Novae Angliae. It's called Alma Potschk, and it's a fairly recent introduction, only been around for half a century or so. The great thing about them is that they stand up for themselves. They've got stiff, strong stems, and they're very robust. But the great glory of them is their wonderful flowers. Absolutely masses and masses. Don't need any staking, just get on with it. When we talk about Michaelmas daisies, most of us are usually referring to this plant. It's a form of Aster novae belgii. They come in a vast array of colours, varying from white through all sorts of lilacs, lavenders, through to very deep purple, and there are a few pinker varieties too. The only disadvantage with this whole group of plants is that they tend to suffer from mildew. Well, this glorious display is from Aster novae belgii, Fair Lady, and it's the exception to the rule. What a beauty it is. If you look carefully, its foliage, tiny, tiny leaves, lovely stiff stems, is actually free of mildew. If you look at it a little more closely, you can see that the opening flowers and the buds are a deeper sort of purple. And as they age, they get paler and paler. But if you look at the centres, some of them, the new flowers, are bright, bright yellow, full of that pollen. But as they age and have been pollinated, they turn to a sort of really nice brown. And at that stage, the bees aren't interested anymore because no more nectar's produced and there's no pollen there for them to enjoy. 13 years ago, Pat Havers took over as head gardener. Why do you like asters so much?
This time of the year, I always describe them like a patchwork quilt on there of just different colours. I love them.
Eventually, they all go brown. At what stage do you cut them down?
Well, it's mostly after the first frost and there's no aster flowers left on there. And then we cut the whole thing down.
Right down to the ground?
Yeah, we start at one end. We don't stop until we're right down at the bottom.
Right, that must take some time.
It does take a lot of time.
Those herbaceous borders look grand. But what else do you do to keep that interest going in other parts of the garden?
Well, that's very high maintenance border. So then we've got this lovely grass border.
Yeah.
It's just packed with grasses and it keeps the interest going all through the autumn and all through the winter. So we don't have to cut it down until the end of February.
Exactly. So whereas lots of these grasses are really light, hardly there at all, that is really solid, isn't it?
It is, and it's great for the wildlife.
Right. So it's a miscanthus.
Yeah.
I think it's Klein
Yeah.
fontaine,
Yeah.
meaning little fountain. Mind you, at the moment, it's more like a waterfall, isn't it?
It is.
Really, loads of it.
It is.
So, Pat, have you got any special favourites?
I have, it's the Steeper Gigantea. It's probably the first one I ever loved, and
Yeah.
I'm sticking with that one.
It's also very prominent, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's lovely golden. They call it Spanish oats, don't they?
Yeah, and I love it. I don't know why.
Love the way it moves. But it's planted at the front of the border, so not is that really cheeky putting a big plant like that, but must be very dry there, and that's just what Steeper Gigantea wants.
Perfect for this border as well, with our no watering, so it fits in fantastically.
Yeah, and it's thriving, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
Far from autumn just being about dying down and fizzling out, this view just energises you. Just look at it. Look at the way those branches wave around so gently in the breeze. And how about that brilliant solidago there, called golden fleece, with these great long tassels of bright yellow flowers. And then follow it up to the crabapple behind it, golden hornet, absolutely dripping with fruit. What a picture. Oh. Just look at this. Isn't it glorious? This is Clematis tangutica, Bill Mackenzie. It was discovered here by Valerie Finnis, who was both a student and later a teacher at Waterperry Gardens. And it was named after the famous plantsman Bill Mackenzie. What I love about it is it has an enormously long season. Not only does it have these thick, sepals. They really, really are quite solid. In fact, it's often called the orange peel clematis, but they're followed by these silken seed heads. And oh, I wish you could touch them. They are so soft. And every flower is going to make a seed head because, of course, these flowers are full of pollen and nectar and go on giving that manna, that food and drink to all sorts of insects, all the way from midsummer right into winter. Oh, well, could anything epitomise the autumn better than this beautiful aster? It's Aster Little Carlo, and it has to be my all-time favourite. But every plant we've seen today just goes to show that if we choose the right plant and put them in the right setting, we can all create a most beautiful garden which is going to last right the way through to the end of autumn. And we've still got winter to come.
When I see a display of asters like that, I do feel very envious because we struggle to grow good asters here. However, we've still got dahlias ticking over, flowers still appearing. One of my favourites, David Howard, still working like that. But some dahlias have done their stuff and won't produce any more flowers. Now, at this point, although they haven't been hit by frost, I could leave them and wait till the frost comes, but actually I like to start the process of bringing dahlias in under protection bit by bit as soon as they finish flowering. If you're growing them in the ground, you've got a choice to make. And that choice is actually based upon what soil you have. Here at Longmeadow we have heavy clay and it's very wet in winter, and they hate the combination of cold and wet. However, if you have sandy soil or chalky soil and it's free draining, they should survive. And if you don't want to dig them up, give them a good mulch. Mulch them thickly with compost, with straw, with whatever you've got that will provide a warm blanket over the top of them, and that will help an awful lot. This is Verone's obsidian, a lovely dahlia, but it's done its stuff. So I'm going to take this pot, empty it out, start the storage process of dahlias, and then I've got a pot free. Whee! There we go, Ned. Whoa. Very good. Now, first thing I'm going to do is cut back the top growth. So just get in and cut back like this. All right, now I can see what I'm doing a bit better. I want to remove them without damaging the tubers. Now, I'm just using this to go around the edge. There we go, lovely. You might think that all you have to do is stick that in the pot, put the pot somewhere safe, and that would be fine. But actually, it's better to clean the tubers right off. So just gently free all the soil from them, trying not to break the tubers up. Sometimes a stiff brush is very useful at this stage. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is to make sure there are no slugs in here and there are no rotten tubers. Now, at this point, I'm going to wash the rest of that soil off. I know there are some people who don't, but you're just trying to get it so you can see that there's nothing in there you don't want to store. Now, obviously, these are now wet and there is moisture in the stems. So what I do is store them upside down. Then after 24 hours, turn them that way up, and they're ready for storage. There are lots of different ways of storing dahlia tubers. I like to wrap them in newspaper loosely. You can use spent compost, you can use sand, you can use coir, just something that will absorb moisture and retain moisture a little bit too, because you don't want them to dry out and you don't want them to be too wet. Never store dahlias in an airing cupboard or anywhere that's centrally heated. It's too dry and too warm. You want somewhere that is frost-free but cool and fairly humid. So a shed, a garage, if you've got it, a cellar, perfect. And then they can be brought out and potted on, usually in early April. Now, if you know Moffat in the southwest corner of Scotland, you will know that you can never accuse it of being a particularly dry place. But the rainfall and humidity that they have there is the reason why the garden we went to visit has such a fascinating and particular range of plants.
Craigburn Gardens have been my life for the last 30 years. A labour of love, a true journey. I came here in 1983. What there was car park and just general wilderness. I'd grown up in the Midlands where I knew how to grow all those wonderful English cottage garden plants, but they're just not the things that you can grow here. Somehow I had to find a way to garden here. My name is Janet McGowan and I'm the co-owner of Craigburn Garden in Dumfriesshire in southwest Scotland. Meconopsis, which are Himalayan blue poppies, are one of the features of Craigburn, but when I actually moved here and the garden was just wilderness, there wasn't anything like this growing here. They come from the cloud-filled chasms of the Himalayan foothills. So, I mean, in some ways, not unlike the terrain here, and certainly the climate is not dissimilar. These beautiful poppies, which thrive in the mild, damp conditions here in the west of Scotland, gave me a clue as to the possible direction to take with the garden. So in search of inspiration, I set off to Nepal on the adventure of a lifetime. We organised a local guide, but I had no idea that trekking in the Himalayas in the monsoon season would be so challenging. After the first day, our Sherpa took one look at me sort of lying there exhausted and thought, I think this one needs help. That's how I met Dawa.
My name is Dawa Sherpa. I came here in 1997, 26 October. Sherpa, Shar is east, Pa is people. East people. We growing food what valuable to eat, what valuable to feed the animal. That's why we are so experienced to grow seed, so experienced to make the soil. And when we are sowing, when we are planting, when we are taking crop, it's experience.
I invited Dawa to come to Scotland to help as I started the groundwork at Craigburn. And eventually he settled here for good. That's when the story of the garden really began. And I realized that he was somebody who was natural, somebody who didn't need to learn to know what was the right thing to do. Since then, Craigburn has become our mini Himalayan valley.
This is the plant called giant Himalayan lily, Corydiocorinium jagaitium. Book says they need to be woodland, half shade, half sun. Take 7 years for first flower. But I said completely wrong, I'm going to grow myself. This lily in Himalaya more than this wild garlic. Honestly, all river is covered. August is all river is white, 17-foot tall flower.
This red rhododendron up here, which I think is amazing, is rhododendron arboreum. Arboreum means tree, so they're tree rhododendrons, they're not shrubs. They actually grow in glens that are very much like this one. This could be a small valley in the Himalayas. It's just a cracker. It's just a little bit of the Himalayas encapsulated in a moment, a plant while it's in flower, yeah.
This tree come from East Nepal called panya. We chop them only leaf and collect them and feeding the animal in winter. If I don't prune this is going to be very high, but nothing leaf, nothing branch, and only like umbrella, only leaf up there. In Nepal, we need more leaf. We don't want the tree, we want the leaf. Bamboo, yeah, like the green man. Yeah, yes, that's doing very, very good.
It's been a long process, more than 30 years, learning about plants in the wild and how they can be translated. I started not knowing what direction I was going to go in, and then I got sucked into the whole sort of Himalayan thing, and that's when I met Dahlia. I mean, you know, he's my best friend.
I've always been very envious of people who could grow Meconopsis. To me, it is one of those plants I would love to have in the garden. The secret is humid air. And when you have a dry summer like last summer, they just don't like it at all. But I will keep trying. Now, the main feature of the wooden garden at the moment, of course, are fallen leaves. And this is sort of peak fallen leaf moment. And if you've got fallen leaves covering your borders, don't try and tidy them up. Leave them. They're only going to do good. They form a mulch, they'll work into the soil, they'll improve the soil structure above all else. They will also act as a kind of heat retentive mulch, a cover for wildlife, and if they do form a soggy carapace or shell over any herbaceous perennials, just clear them away with your hands and that will stop the perennial rotting. But otherwise, just leave them alone. However, off the borders, I regard them as a harvest. And I want to gather every last one. And the easiest way to do that is with a mower. Because not only does it collect them up very efficiently, but it also chops them, and that's a big help. These leaves have been chopped enough to increase their surface area by at least twice as much. And leaves biodegrade mainly by fungal action, not bacteria. And it's mainly bacteria that make compost. That's the big difference between the two. So as long as the leaves are damp and stay damp, they will biodegrade really well to make leaf mould. And leaf mould is one of the unsung heroes of the garden. And that's why I gather up as many leaves as I can. Hidden away behind this hedge, we have the leaf mould bay. This is not compost. It's not like a compost bay at all. It works in a very different way. For a start, the bay is ideally made out of chicken wire because you want air. You want air at every stage, whereas for a compost bay, you can have solid sides. And this is not turned. We fill this up with leaves, and by the time we're finished, it's right up to the top of the bay. Make sure it's damp and then just leave it. And fungus does the work. And what you'll find is this lovely crumbly mixture that is perfect either as a mulch for woodland plants or adding to our potting compost mix. which gives a beautiful soil structure for roots to grow in. But if you've got limited space, you don't need a leaf mould bay to make really good leaf mould. All you need is a bag. This is peat-free compost bag. Fill it up with your chopped leaves. The only thing being, make sure they're not too dry. And now I'm just going to damp that down. Just with a hose pipe, give it a blast as you fill it. Ooh, that is a blast. And put some more in. Another little soak. And then make a few holes in the bottom. Like that, like that. And any excess moisture can drain out. And then just fold over the top like that. Don't need to seal it. Stash it somewhere and forget about it. Forget about it for at least 6 months and preferably a year. And what will happen is that it will biodegrade down to leaf mould and look like that. It smells sweet, it's soft, it's crumbly, it's got a lovely texture. I will bag all this up, and then over the winter months, we sieve it. We do a bag or two at a time, ready for use next spring in our potting compost. Now, we're going to join Arit, who has gone to Essex to visit a new housing estate with an innovative approach to its gardens.
When it comes to a new housing estate, you expect to see, well, new houses, obviously, some road infrastructure, fences, maybe a bit of lawn, if you're lucky, some shrubs. But this is a housing estate with a difference.
When I drive into the estate, it brings a smile to my face every time.
They are full of flowers, bright colours. They just bring joy to you when you look out your window and make you feel happy.
This is Chateau Wood, a development of 86 houses in the village of Elmstead Market in Essex. I'm here because it's raised the bar when it comes to planting on a new estate, because 50% of the gardens are anything but typical. It's so exciting to see this amount of planting on a new development. All the plants are up close and personal to the houses. Gaura, steeper, herbs. You wouldn't expect to see this. And the clue is in the name. Chateau Wood is around the corner from the famous gardens created by the late, great designer and plantswoman Beth Chatto. And the developers gained permission to name the estate in her honour. But there was a condition, that the current Beth Chatto team were to be involved in the planting design. It was in 1960 that Beth Chatto and her husband Andrew set about transforming what was poor quality farmland into a series of highly influential gardens. The planting varied widely because it had to cope with hugely diverse conditions. Beth's granddaughter, Julia Bolton, was determined that if her grandmother's name was to be adopted by the new housing estate, so would her gardening legacy, but it had to be done sustainably. It does look amazing, Julia. I mean, you must be really proud of what you've done here.
I am, yes, thank you. We were looking to create a planting scheme that was good for biodiversity, that would be easy to care for in the long run, would be beautiful and not need to be watered. And it was important for us that it could be cared for by a team of non-horticulturists.
I guess what's really important and what you've done is ensure that there's a blueprint, a methodology that could be rolled out to other estates, in essence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important now that we do things differently, that we start thinking about the environment more, thinking about biodiversity more, and we can do that so simply by using plants.
Yeah. Julia's team's key touchstone for the planting here was her grandmother's famous gravel garden. Originally a car park, Beth's gravel garden was planted as an experiment to test a range of drought-tolerant plants and became the perfect example of her mantra, right plant, right place. But for the plan to work, the soil on the new estate needed to be specially prepared. Rather than use nutrient-rich topsoil, the developer agreed to use a 30-centimetre layer of locally sourced sand and gravel, creating a weed-free aggregate into which planting began in 2022. At the helm has been head gardener Åsa Gregerswalg. It's really lovely being in amongst the planting. It is really beautiful. So what else are you planning to put into here, or what have we got here that's worked really well?
So we've really taken the plants that are the hardest workers and the easiest to maintain from the gravel garden and used them here. So evergreen shrubs, ornamental grasses and lots of perennials. The gowras, called Anothera now, they're doing really well. I mean, they're blooming from May until September.
At Beth Chatto's gravel garden, it is famously known for it never has been watered since the plants went in. What's the situation here?
It's exactly the same thing. So we only water when planting. If it's a really hot, dry spell, we might have to keep an eye on the plants for 1 or 2 weeks afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great ethos, and
It
obviously
is.
they are loving it and thriving in it. But in terms of the care for you and the team, what's the sort of care regime? How many of you are coming and how often?
So it's 16 hours per month. So 2 people for 1 day a month.
For the whole estate?
For the whole estate.
Wow.
It's right plant, right place.
Yeah.
It really comes down to that.
Yeah.
And this is something, a concept that can work elsewhere as well.
Of course, this project is of interest to gardeners and designers like me. But really, it's the residents that it will impact. Residents like Donna Cousins and Andrew Duffield. Donna, you moved in about 3 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, 3 years in this month, actually.
How does it feel then to have a garden that's pre-done and looked after?
It's absolutely lovely. When we first came, it was, you know, a new garden, so it hadn't matured. And now it's all mature and we've got lovely butterflies, bees, and it's lovely colours as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. And then for yourself, Andy, you've bought a house that doesn't have the front garden.
I've got so inspired by all of this. I ditched the idea of doing a normal garden, so I've done this on my own at the back, my own version, my own take of it.
That is so
drought-resistant garden. And I think somehow the plant, like even here, where you can see this here, look across there and there's another bit, it links the community together.
It's clear that the added curb appeal of the planting is encouraging residents to engage with their gardens. Not always easy on new estates when the ground is often compacted and barren. So it's inspiring to see how the plants are attracting more insects. Ecologist Dr. Chris Gibson has spent the last 3 years monitoring their numbers. So this is the observing station.
This is amongst the flowers, watching the insects coming. This is all part of what I'm doing, surveying this site. So bioabundance has fallen throughout the world in recent years, and this is the sort of thing we can do to actually put back a little bit of that bioabundance. And we have done it, because the survey has shown that on average there are 10 times more larger insects in this planting as compared with the next door.
That is actually incredible.
We have bumblebees, we have carder bees around us at this moment. You can see on the lavender here there are rosemary beetles, there are ladybirds, there are cinnamon bugs over there on the salvias.
Right.
They are here because of the diversity of the plants, with a diversity of flower forms, each of which attract different insects. Solitary wasps, solitary bees, they're nesting in here.
I'm sold. It's just wonderful. With so many new homes needed across the UK, imagine if more thought was given to bespoke planting to suit the local conditions. Low carbon footprint, low water usage, low care input, but really high on biodiversity and great for the environment. And also, happy residents.
I actually went to visit Chateau Wood a couple of years ago when it was just beginning. So it's fascinating to see how well it's coming on. Good boy. We talk a lot about cuttings, softwood cuttings, semi-ripe cuttings, hardwood cuttings, but not so much about root cuttings. And root cuttings are a perfectly good way to propagate plants, particularly those perennials that have fleshy roots. Oriental poppies are a really good one. Acanthus, verbascum. And this, which is Echinops. This is Echinops retro, which has the wonderful round blue flowers, almost metallic, which will flower from July right through to this time of year. Now, this is one that I lifted from the wildlife garden, popped into a bag. It's regrown, and normally root cuttings you do when the plant is dormant, between now and March. But this will do fine. Move the bag out the equation. Now, if I open that out, if you look, here are the roots. So if I get my secateurs, we can take off a section of root like that, and like that. In principle, you don't want to take more than a third of the roots of the plant, otherwise it weakens it too much. I'm going to take some smaller ones too. Okay. Now what we need is a really free-draining compost. So I've got my normal potting compost, which has also got perlite and grit added to it, but also some horticultural grit. Be generous with it. This is important. If you haven't got grit, use perlite or vermiculite or even sand. But it must have good drainage. Get a pot and fill it up. Now, when you're taking root cuttings, it does matter which way up these are. The conventional way of doing this is to cut straight at the bottom. I'm going to cut that and then cut this at an angle at the top, and then I know that that is the top and that is the bottom. And that's one. You want something to make a hole, and the idea is to bury them the depth of the compost. So the top is either at the surface or just below. Now, I will top that up with grit and fill the pot. Now that wants to go somewhere where it is reasonably protected. Water it, don't let it dry out, but don't let it get too soggy. It is not going to root until next spring. It's not as slow as a hardwood cutting, but it is slower than a semi-ripe cutting. Now, if you have thinner roots, they're too flimsy to push into the soil. So if you get a wider container and a seed tray will work pretty well. Put that in there, the same mix. Like that. Now, lay the roots flat on the surface. So I'm going to cut that. They need to be as long as possible because they don't have the same food reserves. And I'll get 3 in there, just like that. Cover it up with grit. And treat it in exactly the same way. The chances of it producing new plants are smaller than the thick ones, but it does work. And quite frankly, if you can use the straggly bits of root to create new plants, then that's a win. Now, I think if we're honest, most of us prefer to retreat to the comfort of indoors when the weather is playing rough during the winter months. But at Gravetime Manor in Sussex, Tom Coward and his team relish the opportunity to get out and make the most of the weather, whatever it throws at them.
A lot of people ask me what my favourite time of year is in the garden, and they think I'm mad in the cold and wet, but I think I absolutely love winter, particularly January and February. Winter is the only time that you can go faster than nature and catch up. You can really get in control of the garden and be ready for the spring. So what I'm doing is pruning this wonderful white wisteria called Wisteria floribunda chironorda. It's pure white and it has the most wonderful fragrant flowers and it fills the garden with scent. And when you prune a plant, it's really important to understand the objectives and what you're trying to achieve. And the thing about this wisteria is it's so vigorous, it really wants to take over the entire world. And for that reason, we give it 2 prunes. We give it a summer prune and a winter prune. And in the winter prune, we're looking at taking out this long, whippy growth to reduce the leaf cover so that we've got a tight bunch of flowers in the summer. There is some strange pleasure that I get from working in the more extreme weathers. It's certainly character building and it's remarkable. It often looks horrible when you're inside in the warm and you get out in it and it's actually very uplifting and invigorating. So there's certain groups of plants in the year that are really, really personally special to me, and sweet peas really are one of them. They always remind me of my mum. She's always grown them. They're quite large seeds, and sometimes people have trouble germinating them, and I always used to, till my friend Aaron, who's a sweet pea master, taught me this technique. So first of all, I use these deep cell trainers so there's plenty of length for the root to go down, and I fill them up a third. What I do then is water it thoroughly. Trick with these sweet peas is to get the right moisture content so that they have enough to germinate, but not so much that they rot off. And on this label, we're going to put the name of the sweet pea. And very important, we put the date on the back. What's the date? And then I'm going to cover that with peat-free seed compost. And I'm not going to water that, because all the water's going to come from the bottom there. And that is going to give us the perfect conditions for the sweet pea to germinate. And I'm going to cover this with newspaper, and I'm going to check it every day. And as soon as they're germinated, we're going to remove the newspaper. And to prevent mice bothering us, I'm going to make a mouse-proof table. And it's so that the darling little creatures can't climb up. I love them, but I wouldn't want them to eat my sweet peas. I love sharing the garden with guests, but the best bit is sharing it with the other gardeners and learning from them and teaching with them. So we've got a really good team that has different specialities throughout the garden.
So I'm Helena, I'm the assistant head gardener here, and my main role is looking after the veg garden and planning where the crops are going to go for next year.
Helena is phenomenally organised. I can't do that. I'll be lost without her. So whilst it's winter, we can get this all planned now so that when spring comes and we're mad busy, it should run like clockwork.
These are our black currants and our red currants, and we prune them at this time of year. They get pruned differently. So red currants form fruiting spurs at the base of 1-year-old wood. So what we're doing is we're cutting these back to 1 or 2 buds, which encourages the spur formation. So we'll get a nice cluster of fruit on this stem here. I love doing pruning, and I always find that you should do where you think that you get to halfway through the job, stop, make yourself a cup of tea and really look at the plant, because I always find I'm a lot further than halfway, and it's knowing when to stop is my problem with it. The main difference between the red currants and the black currants is where they hold their fruit. So with the red currants, we were pruning to produce spurs on the side of the main stem. The black currants actually hold their fruit on the main stem, and they'll fruit mostly on 1-year-old wood, so the wood that grew last summer. So the key to pruning this is you want to take out the old wood, and it's really useful because as a plant they help you out. It's almost colour-coded, so the grey wood is 1-year-old wood, and then it gets browner as it gets older. The biggest mistake people make when they're pruning is that they're not brutal enough, because you really have to think that in the middle of summer this is going to be full of leaf. If you don't take enough off, you won't get such good fruit. So remember, you're the boss. I think that's the key thing.
So this is our blueberry crop, and it really is one of my pride and joys. We've got quite a big old cage here, but I have to say, they're one of the best plants to grow at home, even if you have one in a pot. So herbaceous, which means they need acid soil. And we're mulching the plants with pine needles. And what the pine needles do is they create an herbaceous woodland soil. So, of course, not everyone's lucky enough to have a pine forest on their back door. But if you've got an old conifer in the corner, or even using your Christmas tree needles, you know, they're really useful. And like I say, the mulch adds organic matter to the soil. It helps lower the pH. It also keeps the moisture in through the summer. And the moisture, when you're growing fruit, is actually really important. 90% of each fruit is just water, and so it gives us bigger, fatter, juicier berries. Got a fair way to go, and it's quite a lot of work on a grey, wet day, you know, and sometimes you need your optimism to keep you getting through, but it's the best thing when you think at the height of summer, this cage is going to be packed with the most delicious fruit. And, you know, when it gets a bit dark and gloomy, I always think about that on jobs like this, and it makes you really look forward to it.
Now, like Tom, I sowed my sweet peas in the same deep plugs, and they have grown incredibly well. In fact, arguably, they've grown a bit too well. And so I need to redress that a little bit. Because if you sow sweet peas in autumn, which is a really good idea, and they do well, there is a real danger that as they grow, they tangle, and you end up with a tangled mass of sweet pea, which is not ideal. So I'm going to pinch these out, and that means literally what it says. So if you've got a long growth like that, if I just use my forefinger and thumb and pinch it about halfway down above a leaf, and this will guarantee bushier plants, and bushier plants means more side shoots, and more side shoots means more flowers. See, look at that, they're already a bit tangled. I don't think I've ever had sweet peas that have grown so well from an autumn sowing. And actually, this is a variety called Janet Scott that I've never grown before, so it could be to do with the variety. Now, although the gardening year at Longmeadow is gently coming to a close, in the weeks ahead, we've got 4 special programs for you, celebrating getting out into the garden in winter and all the joys of the garden across the seasons.
One of these stalwarts of winter is holly. Folklore and mythology run through its branches.
It is winter that decides when to reveal a really good design. And if it's good now, you can be rest assured it's going to look fabulous in the rest of the season.
I'm in for a real treat today. Didn't it just wake you up?
Look at that. It stopped me in my tracks. So, let's get these in.
The garden, I strongly feel, has called me here. I'm in a relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my boyfriend knows this. It's true love.
There we are. A little bit of extra sparkle.
And the best thing is that I really just went round the garden, repotting a few things. It's looking really pretty and very Christmassy.
But back to the present, because there are still jobs to do, and here they are for this weekend. Paper white daffodils will brighten up the darkest winter day, but they are not hardy, so therefore cannot be planted outside. But if you plant them in a pot with peat-free compost with a little bit of extra drainage added, cover them over, maybe add a decorative layer of grit, water them and put them somewhere warm, they should be flowering in 6 weeks' time. One of my favorite winter jobs is to sharpen all my cutting tools, from secateurs to axes. Whatever they are, clean them over with wire wool to remove any rust or ingrained dirt, and then sharpen the edge so they're really sharp, and this makes them both much more effective and much safer to use. Finally, oil them and put them away, ready for action. Evergreen agapanthus are not fully hardy and need protection in the winter. The deciduous kind, whose leaves die back, are more robust, and if you're growing them in the ground with good drainage, can just be mulched and they should be fine. If you're growing them in a pot, you may wish to protect the pot from cracking in frost as much as protecting the plant. In any event, the evergreen kind should be brought in. I place my pots in a cold frame so I can give them ventilation if needed, but if you don't have cold frames, a greenhouse or a shed will do the job as well.
Now, here. Come here. There's a good boy. Thank you. Now, down you go. There's a good boy.
That's it for today. And looking back over the year, I have to say it has been a really unusual year. At times quite tricky, at other times pure delight. We had a glorious spring, but of course it was quite dry, and at the time we thought that was a good thing. But of course it was followed by the driest summer ever recorded, and certainly the driest I've known here at Longmeadow. And at the same time here, we completely revamped the jewel garden. So it's had quite a tough time to re-establish and start again from scratch in these very trying conditions. But having said that, certain things have come through with flying colours. It's been one of the best fruit years I can ever remember, of all kinds. And as we've gone into late summer and autumn, everything seems to have really settled in and looked its best self. And like with all things to do with climate change, we've learned. We gardeners are having to adapt and change and learn. Now, don't forget, in the next few weeks, we've got some special programs for you. But that's it for today. And I look forward to seeing you back here next spring for a new season of gardening. So until then, bye-bye.